Hi, so this is an extra video about drawing on the 2D plane and then extracting the geometry. Wanted to show you some extra workflow tips. So when I hide my geometry, see I have been drawing on this plane. This is a more accurate drawing than the previous one in the other video. I wanted to show you that it's also very easy to start out with a sketch that you already made and then adjust it. I can of course continue painting, but I can also use regular sculpting tools. So for instance, when I choose my mask lasso and for instance I want to rotate that arm and I'm going to a lower subdivision level, I'm at almost 2.5 million. So I'm going to about 148,000 and control click on the canvas to soften the mask and then control click on the backside to invert the mask, and when I press the R key for my rotate tool and now position my transpose line, now I can rotate the sculpt or the drawing I mean. So if I wanted to adjust that, that's something I could do. And when I go back to my highest subdivision level, I can of course also use the move tool. So when I want to adjust with the move tool, I can also do that, which is sometimes preferable to draw. So a lot of advantages in this method, and you don't have to worry about 3D, you're just worrying about the outline, which you can do of course also with, if you go to your material, and when you're working with regular geometry, you can also use your silhouette material and then you have a black outline. But I think this method really is more to my liking than drawing with a silhouette material. And of course, you can continue shaping this as much as you like, and then, like I've shown you in the previous video, when you extract, then you can start concentrating on the 3D portion. And of course, this mesh has been ZRemeshed, but as you go along, you can ZRemesh it as often as you want to. And the advantage of that with ZRemeshing instead of dynameshing is that you can work at low subdivision levels. And once I have a higher subdivision level, so for instance, when I'm happy with my sculpt, I can subdivide it. I've pressed Ctrl D to subdivide it. So now I've got a higher subdivision level. When I go to my mask pen tool and Control click and drag, and I think the geometry is still a little bit low, so Control D again, and I'm going to delete my lower subdivision levels. So Control click and drag to mask out. Now go to polygroups, or no, just Control W, and that creates my geometry, my polygroups I mean. And now I'm going to stop. Yeah, sorry about that. So going to ZRemesh, but this time with a different setting, so ZRemesher. This time I'm going to, because I've made these extra polygroups, press the keep groups button, and now when I ZRemesh, and it will take a second. So once it's finished, those polygroups will have extra geometry, and I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo because my setting is far too low at the moment, so probably 5 will be better, and then I will pause again. So I'm back, and the ZRemesh with the polygroups has resulted in extra geometry, and of course I can continue refining like that. And so on. So I think this method really has a lot of advantages over Dynamesh, because with legs this close together, with Dynamesh you have to go to a really high resolution in order to keep the legs separate, or you have to work with separate parts, separate geometry parts, and then click the group buttons so that the parts stay separate. But with this way of working, you just do a ZRemesh each time that you are happy with your work. And of course I haven't got any fingers yet, but they will be added, and at some point I will or Dynamesh or use the ZModeler brush to add extra geometry and extract the fingers and things like those. And all the time you're working with really low geometry, and I really like it because it is a very fast method once you are in the process of working. So in a previous part I added fingers to my geometry with the ZModeler brush with QMesh, and added some edge loops and continued shaping the hand and did a ZRemesh. And in the meantime I've also added eyes, and still have a long way to go to shape everything. And at this stage I've actually used the slice curve brush to create different polygroups, and then mirror and weld to mirror all the polygroups over. And now I am going to use ZRemesher again. And the reason I created those polygroups was to make sure that the ZRemesher will respect the borders of those polygroups. So, and I see that I have an extra loop over here, which is not really necessary, an extra polygroup over here. Anyway, when you polygroup like that, and when you go to ZRemesher, so I have to go to geometry and ZRemesher. So again, keep groups. And I'm going to zoom out, and my target is at 6. That's good. So ZRemesher, I'm going to pause for a moment. So ZRemesher has finished. So when I turn on line now, you see that with those polygroups, ZRemesher has perfectly respected those groups. Again, for the fingers, that borders of those polygroups have been perfectly respected. Now this is still an intermediate mesh, so this will be ZRemeshed later on, maybe at some point even Dynameshed, but usually I don't use Dynamesh for models like this. I just keep using ZRemesher. I see that for the face I have not good geometry right now, and what I usually do is then undo the ZRemesh, and then for instance for the mouth, then I add extra geometry like that. I could use, when I press the B key and go to the ZRemesher guide, I could draw guides, but I prefer to just draw something like that. And for the eyes I'm going to do that also. They have to be refined anyway. I'm just in the process of creating a good base mesh actually. So when I do that, then normally when I ZRemesh I should have better topology over here. And for the nose I could maybe do something like that, and this will tell ZRemesher to follow that geometry. And let's test it out. So, and I'm going to pause again. So ZRemesher has finished. So when I press Shift F, it's somewhat better as far as the mouth is concerned. Usually I do that a couple of times if necessary, but if you do that. Okay, and again pause. So I'm back, and ZRemesher has done a bit better job over here, so I could do again the eyes over there, which I will do but offline. So bye for now. So I've ZRemeshed again, and I've exaggerated a bit, but you see now the polyflow is much better. So when I do Control Z to undo and hide my frame, then you see that is how I sculpted it. Of course, this way, if you already have a very detailed sculpt, then that's not the good time to do this, of course, because you are going to create what you already sculpted. But this is what I do to create a good ZRemesher mesh. And instead of using the ZRemesher guides, I just sculpt some valleys and some peaks like you see here, and then Control Shift Z to redo, and now this is my result for what I get with the ZRemesher, and now I have a good polyflow. So I went all around the ears, and you see how nicely ZRemesher follows the valleys and the peaks when you do it like that. And then I think it's more intuitive to use ZRemesher like that and to force ZRemesher to follow the valleys and the peaks than to use the ZRemesher brush. So, and at a certain point in my sculpting process, then I arrive at a mesh that I am happy with, and then I won't ZRemesh again, but just subdivide and refine everything. So that is the process that I use. I still have to extract the feet, so I'm going to ZRemesh again, and usually I do the feet and the hands together, and then at last the face, because that's one of the most important parts for the ZRemesher. So I should have done my feet first, and then normally I should have arrived at a good topology that does not need ZRemeshing or dynameshing again. So just wanted to share with you all those workflow, because I've actually not seen anyone else use it like that. So I start out, usually when I don't have external references, I start out with a plane that I draw upon. I'm going to hide the other ones, so frame. So, and it has been, oh yes, that's my polyframe that was visible. So usually start out with a plane like that, and then I'm going to hide the others, and then extract it like I've shown previously, then ZRemesh, and over here for the fingers I've used the Z modeler brush to add those fingers, and I should have done the feet also at that stage. I've added the eyes, and then that's what you also saw me do, to finally ZRemesh everything again. And to get a good topology, I sculpt valleys and peaks, so ZRemesher will follow them, and then usually I do a last ZRemesh, and then I arrive at a very sculptable mesh. If necessary, I can always use a Z modeler brush to add some loops or delete some loops if there are too many or too little. But this is usually a good and a fast workflow. So I hope you found it useful. Bye for now. And as a last part, I also wanted to show you the following. So what I've done here is create extra polygroups. So I've just used my masking brush, so to mask out, and I'm going to clear my polyframe, so just like that, and over here just like that. So I've already shown you that ZRemesher follows the topology, so if you sculpt valley and peaks, it follows the topology, but another method is just mask out parts like that and press Ctrl W. Now I'm not going to do that because I've already done so. So when I press Ctrl Z to undo everything, so Shift F to clear everything, Shift F to clear my mask, but I'm going to clear my lines like that. So if you mask out those parts and then press Ctrl W, then the masked parts will create polygroups, and that is not really visible, that one. So you see those are all polygroups that I created with masking. So if you then ZRemesh with keep groups on, and I'm going to bring back my lines and press Ctrl Shift Z to redo the, oh yeah, of course, now my ZRemesher is not anymore in my undo stack, so I'm going to ZRemesh and pause again. So okay, I'm back. So ZRemesher has finished. So you see it nicely follows the polygroups with keep groups on, and of course I've done that for the arms and the hands also, and oops, sorry about that, and the legs, of course, to have extra flow control over the geometry over there if needed. But usually I don't go that far because the topology for the arms is good for sculpting. I usually do that for the bum, the back, and the scapula, and the torso, and the stomach area. And for the face, I usually sculpt valleys and peaks. And of course, you have the ZRemesher guide that you can use, and you have also the slice curve brush that you can use. And all the while, with ZRemesher, with keep groups on, it uses the borders of the polygroups, and with valleys and peaks instead of ZRemesher guides, sculpting like that, I think it's much more intuitive, and eventually you arrive at a very fast pace at a very sculptable mesh, which is very low low geometry, so that there is not much geometry. And I said before, with Dynamesh you usually end up with a very dense mesh. I really prefer the method that I have shown you here. I apologize if everything I have shown you is a bit confusing and it's not very well orchestrated, the recording of this video, but I'm not really that comfortable with sculpting and recording at the same time, so sorry about that. But so basically in this video I've shown you with the previous video that I start out with a plane where I draw, then I can revert back to that drawing for my outline to make sure that I'm following the proportions in the front side. The right side is usually then just a matter of pulling everything out, and then I use ZRemesher the way I shown you with polygroups and sculpting valleys and peaks to arrive at a very sculptable mesh eventually with good polyflow. Here there is a bit cleanup work, but I've done everything a bit hasty for the recording of this video. So this was it. I hope you enjoyed it, and again I apologize for the fact that it's been a bit messy, all of that. So you see here, not too good, so I should redo it a bit. But you see, this is a very good alternative to using Dynamesh, which is a very good tool. I use it a lot. It has good uses, but for rapidly coming to a base mesh for something like this, I really prefer ZRemesher with the workflow that I've shown you. So hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.